8 tips for negotiation and a good book suggestion. So when negotiating deals, which we're doing all day, or negotiating anything that you may experience in your life, we really find these 8 tips historically have been very effective in reaching the optimal outcomes. And so we'll dig right into it. Number 1 is going to be the objective. And so we say that, and it's self-evident that all negotiations have an objective. But really be clear with yourself as to what the objective is. If you're sparring with somebody all day, is the objective really what you think it is, or is it for someone else to tell you that you're right, for someone else to acknowledge that you're smart? Remember, if you can go into a negotiation and say, I don't need any praise, I don't need any acknowledgement, I don't need any understanding, I don't need anybody to say, you know, you're such a good guy. If you don't need anything other than the specific objective of getting somebody on the other side of the table, no matter what it is, to do the thing you want them to do, well then it can be a much simpler exercise. And again, this can all be done honestly, obviously, and in a candid fashion, earnestly. However, keep the objective in line. Don't look for a pat of the ego. Look to accomplish the thing that you want to accomplish. The second is framework mirroring. And so what we mean by this is your analysis of a situation, my analysis of a situation, may be very different than anybody else's. And what we mean by that is not necessarily that it will yield a different outcome, but the mechanism or the framework of thought may work differently. And so many times in negotiations, I've seen people get strung up on saying, well, you're not thinking of it the right way. We're not thinking of it through this process. And to some extent, you're not going to make people think exactly with the same mechanism or rubrics or frameworks in your mind. And so start thinking of it through their way. And how do you get the objective or the outcome the way that you want, running it through their machine of thought? It's a lot easier to do it that way than it is to get to someone to look entirely in a new, novel way that you would. Now, it's not to say that components of your analysis or framework aren't going to influence theirs. However, keep in mind, it's always a lot easier to kind of go with the way someone else is thinking about it, but ultimately trying to yield your desired outcome. And continuing on this is number 3, it's currency. And so we say currency, it's not all deals just deal with dollars. And so there's legacy, there's implications of how other people are treated, with how someone is recognized. And so there's lots of different currencies in any negotiation. And it's important to realize that even if there's 3 important outcomes for a particular meeting for you, there may be 5 important outcomes to somebody else. And if 2 of those you'd be fairly indifferent to, then you may as well give those things, acknowledge them, create value in them in such a way that they win more items. Because if they win more of the items that are important to them, they're likely to give or yield a bit more on items that are important to you. And if there's less items important to you, or they're different, then there can be a very good compromise in doing so. So don't just think of it from your perspective of what's important to you. It's much more important, similar to the objective, similar to the frameworks, to say what is the currency to the counterparty and understanding it in that regard. Number 4, simple, but yet difficult. Be clear. Don't tell people that, hey, it would be nice if we got this one thing. It'd be cool if this was in that direction, or if this moved in that direction. Be clear. What do you want? Don't worry about feelings, as we've mentioned in other videos. People get over things, and you can say things in a diplomatic and polite manner, but be direct, be clear, be very specific in what those objectives are, in what the asks are, and you'll find that it yields a much more productive conversation. And this dovetails into number 5 of be decisive. If you do ask for something and someone says, I can't do that, but I can do this, be prepared to say, yes, that works, or no, that does not work. However, we can split the difference at Y, or whatever the outcome is. Be very decisive. The more people try to compromise, if you do not come back with a specific answer, a clear answer, a decisive answer, they're going to be less incentivized and fatigued to say, why am I even bothering trying to negotiate? I tried to make something work. However, this person couldn't even make a decision when I did something. And so they get the impression that it's your way or the highway, or that this is a binary outcome. So if someone does try to work through something and iterate, give them positive reinforcement in the sense of, you know what, that doesn't work. However, this would work, and I appreciate the way you're thinking of it because it does bring to light A, B, and C. But the point being is, just as much as you want to be clear, you have to be decisive along the way as well. Number 6, this evolves into the idea of retrading. Do not retrade. If you agree to something in a deal, in a negotiation, it is agreed to. And so A, it should make you very careful in what you agree to, and B, you then can have the same expectation of the person you're negotiating with. And so every time something is agreed to, be careful about agreeing to it until you definitely know you want to, and then when you do agree to it, it's written in stone. The amount of remaining negotiated items is diminished. And so it tends to progress conversations in the right way because there's less and less things that aren't agreed to. But be careful. And then if you do that enough times, you are able to then say to someone else, if they start to waffle on the things they've already agreed to, you can say, listen, we've agreed to these things. These are not the optimal terms we would want. There's definitely ways we could improve this. However, we did say it, that was our word, and we would expect the same of you. And by putting it in that perspective of someone reciprocating the behavior that you've already shown them, it's far more likely to take place, and you're going to experience far less retrades. Now, mark my word, you will experience it, and it will be challenging, and it's something you have to work through and put people on the spot at times. However, the reciprocity has a lot of value to it. Number 7, don't bluff. We've made a video about this in the past. Different people have different perspectives on this. However, what I will say is that if you make an offer and someone calls you on it, if you say, let's say not even an offer, an ultimatum, if you do this, I'm going to kill this deal and we're not going to talk about it anymore. If they then do it and you do not walk from the deal, they will know that you are the type of person that says things and does not do them. And so what I would say is be very, very careful of ultimatums, contingencies, deadlines, things that you put out there. And you can do it, but make sure you stick to it, because the moment you bluff and someone calls you on it and you don't do it, you're going to lose credibility for not just that, but for all items in it. And I've heard it, and I can tell you, there's been people that have bluffed on a deal and then went back on it. And years later, when someone's referencing that person for another transaction, or that company, that firm, that fund, they will say, well, you know what, they did say this that time and they didn't do it, so who knows, they'll probably do it again. We could probably get them to do this, but there's a loss of integrity, right? And we define integrity basically as being able to make the same decisions and sticking to them, given the same facts and circumstances, irrespective of some of the outside elements. But notwithstanding our own definitions of values and attributes, we'll say, be very, very careful about bluffing. We don't do it. We'd rather just be direct, tell people what we think, what reality is, what will work, what will not work. Bluffing is a dangerous game because the moment you're called out, you lose credibility, not only for that, but long into the future. And lastly, and this takes a bit of artwork, is have people believe that they've come up with a solution. So let's say you know the perfect solution to the negotiation, to the situation that you're trying to resolve. You could come into the negotiation and start pounding people over the head saying, this is it, this is going to work. If you don't do this, you're all idiots. I'm telling you, this is what we're all going to end up at. And they will almost find every path other than that, just because they don't want to gratify what appears to be your arrogant postulation here. But if you can talk to people and say, listen, we understand what you're looking for here. We want to accomplish it. What if you think about it this way? What's your thought relative to this angle? What's your thought relative to this? What's your thought relative to that? Get people saying yes to things. Get people agreeing to the component constituent parts, and then tie it together and say, well, in light of the fact that we are all on the same page here about A, B, and C, don't you think that something approximating this might make sense? And basically put out the blueprint and lead someone to coming to the conclusion. And if they say, you know what, I have an idea, and they say exactly the thing that you would have led with, don't stand up and say, yes, I told you this, how did you all not see it? Just say, you know what, that's a great idea, let's go with that. And who cares who gets the credit, so long as you have the objective. And that ties all the way back to the beginning of this, is the goal of negotiations is to secure the objectives for your clients, for yourself, for whatever it is that you are negotiating for. And in our situation, we are honest, we are candid, we are transparent, but we don't have egos, we don't play games, we simply go for what needs to be done for our clients. And oftentimes, if you can get the other side to reach the conclusion that you would like them to reach, if they reach it themselves without you having to browbeat them and pound it on and hit them in the head with a hammer, then I assure you it will be a smoother transaction, and it will be a situation where they're much more happy to pursue that path. And so that's the thought for today. We're going to reiterate these 8 tips for negotiation. Make the objectives clear, framework mirroring, understanding currency, be clear, be decisive, don't retrade, don't bluff, have people reach the conclusion themselves. And lastly, as mentioned in the beginning of this, a book that we would mention for everybody to read, and it's a classic, and as they say, you cannot teach a new dog old tricks, is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I'm telling you, there's maybe 10 to 20 business books that every person should read, and I'm not the most learned individual, so I'm not preaching from an ivory tower here, but if you want to be effective at negotiation, and certainly helped in everything that we've done, I would strongly suggest reading that. That's the thought for today. Hope the week continues to go well for everyone. Keep pushing forward. God bless. We'll see everyone next time.